The unexpected call. My daughter-in-law's phone revealed a surprising connection from 6 years ago. Jack sat at the family dinner table, the steaming plates of homemade chicken and cornbread bringing warmth to the otherwise palpable chill of his thoughts. A simple evening, yet he felt like an unwelcome specter in his own life, hovering just out of reach of everyone else's joy. Memories of working late into the night at the auto shop flashed through his mind. Every broken engine brought in, every car fixed, felt heavy on his heart, making him wonder if it was all worth it. The sacrifices his family had made to keep his late father's dream alive felt increasingly invisible. The air hummed with laughter, but underneath, there was a familiar weight he couldn't shake. Emily's phone rang as she picked up her fork, her laughter fading as she glanced at the number. Jack recognized that look, confusion shifting to disbelief. It made his heart race. Who could it be? As she answered, the table fell silent, the clinking of silverware replaced with the heavy sound of hushed breaths. Her expression twisted, a mix of shock and concern. The conversation dragged Jack further into the shadows of his past, where dark clouds of wrongful allegations still clouded his father's name. Jack. Emily's sharp tone pierced through the dense silence. She relayed the damning information, her voice tremulous as if each word held the weight of their family's despair. Jack felt the world tilt beneath him. Those who condemned his father, who buried their dignity and honor, had done so motivated by bias and prejudice. Rage bubbled within him, not just at the injustice done to a man he revered, but at the indifference of the town wrapped in the cocoon of whispered secrets. Should he confront those figures, demand an explanation, or slip back into silence? The pressure twisted in his chest, causing muscles to knot. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emily's unwavering face was a beacon of stability amidst his swirling emotions, yet Jack could feel sharp, contradictory forces tugging at him. The desire for justice warred with unsettling thoughts of retaliation that left him feeling unsteady. Should he act? Or would the truth, if unearthed, unleash chaos that could fracture their family even further? Each syllable exchanged between Emily and the voice on the other end seemed to deepen the pit of uncertainty. Could they unravel the tapestry woven with lies, or would they only stumble into darker waters? As the evening progressed, each revelation throbbed in his mind, layering on additional anxiety. Jack could feel the pulse of the town thrumming beneath him, full of ghosts from the past, warriors of truth who had fought silently, yet some who had turned their backs. Tension hung like a storm cloud. Jack knew he was standing at a crossroads, but which path would lead him to reclaim his father's dignity without destroying the fragile fabric of his family? As he sat there, heart racing, wondering how deeply the past would reach into their future, the phone rang again, the shrill sound slicing through the thick air. Jack's breath hitched. Was this the call that could change everything once more? Jack's fingers trembled slightly as he reached for the phone, a knot of anxiety tightening around his heart. Instinctively, he glanced at Emily, who wore an expression that mixed concern and expectation. Was this the call they needed? Was this the answer to the questions that swirled relentlessly in his mind? Yes. He answered, his voice steadier than the whirlwind of thoughts inside his head. Jack. It's Claire, the voice on the other end cracked. The name alone sent chills racing down Jack's spine. Claire had been an old friend of his father's, someone he had deemed trustworthy in his childhood innocence. The last memory he had of her was when she vanished from town shortly after the allegations arose against his father. Claire was as much a victim of the rumor mill as his family, yet seeing her now felt like opening a door to a dust-filled room long forgotten. What's going on? Why are you calling? Jack's mind raced with possibilities. Had she come back to clear things up, or was it just another piece of the puzzle that would drag them deeper into this quagmire? I need to talk to you about your father, she said. The words hung heavy between them, snatching the air from Jack's lungs. It felt too risky, too tantalizingly close to hope and truth, both of which had been so deliberately stripped away. Why now? After all this time? Jack's voice wavered. Part of him wanted to shut the door firmly, to ignore her, but the deeper-seated yearning to unearth the truth stirred a different urge. Because they need to hear it from someone who was there, Jack. I have clarity now that I didn't have before, she replied, her tone imbued with urgency. I have evidence that might change everything about your father's case. But it's dangerous for me to disclose all this right now. We need to meet in person. Jack's heart pounded. Evidence? After years of silence and a reputation marred by unjust accusations, it felt as if a light had just flickered to life. However, a visceral surge of doubt wormed its way through him. What if it was merely another intricate web of deceit crafted to ensnare him? The weight of accountability for his family's future pressed more heavily than ever. Where? Jack asked, his voice gaining a resolve he barely felt. Meet me at the Crestway Cafe tomorrow at noon. I'll explain everything, Claire said before disconnecting, leaving a hollow silence in her wake. He turned to Emily, whose brow had knitted into a concerned frown. What was that about? She asked cautiously. Jack hesitated. As much as he longed to evade the turbulence of confrontation, he knew that ignorance was a dangerous companion. It's Claire. She claims to have information about Dad, he answered, weighing the words carefully before he spoke them. She wants to meet. Jack observed Emily's reaction. A mixture of apprehension and determination settled in her eyes. If there's a chance to clear your father's name, we have to pursue it, she stated with unwavering conviction. But what if it leads us deeper down an unforgiving path? I'm scared, Jack confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. He could feel the walls of his life tense around him, coiling tighter in anticipation of the storm that might follow. Jack, we can't live in fear of the past forever. If we don't take this chance, the shadows will haunt us all our lives. You deserve to know the truth, she urged softly but firmly. The resolve formed in him like steel, tempered by the fire of necessity. This was more than just his father's dignity at stake, this was about redefining their family narrative for himself, for Emily, for their children. As he stared into Emily's resolute eyes, he realized this was the pivotal moment he had been waiting for. The time had come to face the shadows, but how deep did they stretch, and would he emerge unscathed? With a fragile heart yet burning determination, Jack knew he had to be ready for whatever truth awaited him at the Crestway Cafe. The next day would demand more than he had ever anticipated. It would challenge him to confront not only the painful echoes of the past but to find strength within, potentially altering the course of his family's legacy forever. The air hung heavy with anticipation as Jack made his way to the Crestway Cafe. Each step felt like a countdown, a march toward unknown truths and buried memories. He could taste the bitterness of uncertainty on his tongue. It mingled with the caffeine-fueled anxiety coursing through his veins. He hadn't fully accepted the potential consequences of what he was about to discover, but each moment led him closer to a reckoning. Arriving at the cafe, he noticed the familiar warm hues of its decor, yet today everything felt different, charged with a nervous vitality. The world outside seemed to blur as Jack stepped inside, his focus narrowing only to the table reserved for his encounter. Claire was already seated, her fingers nervously drumming on the tabletop, her gaze fixed on the door as if she were expecting a storm. Jack, she greeted, her voice tremulous, yet holding an undercurrent of urgency. Claire, he replied, taking a seat opposite her. Tension crackled in the space between them, held together by the gravity of shared history and the heavy secrets of the past. You said you had information? Yes, but it's best I explain it all from the beginning. Her eyes darted around the cafe as if shadows might emerge from the corners. Jack leaned forward, the weight of his past anchoring his resolve. I had no idea how deep the troubles ran until I moved away. I was naive, believing in the town's loyalty to your father. But now, with everything I've learned, I realize I was just another pawn in their game, she began, her voice dropping to a whisper. Among the chaos surrounding your family, I witnessed conversations that no one should ever speak of in public. Jack's heart raced with each revelation. Every word from Claire acted as both thread and needle, stitching together the frayed edges of a narrative he had been left to piece in solitude. "What do you mean?" Jack pressed, desperation clawing at his voice. There was a hunger in him, a need to dig deeper into the truths that were long buried. Once the accusations began, there were whispers. Whispers that placed your father in the wrong light, but they weren't just rumors. People had motives to keep the truth hidden. She leaned closer, her expression earnest. "I found documents, Jack. Notes that could prove his innocence." As she spoke, waves of determination surged through him. This was not just about reclaiming his father's name, it was about Jack reclaiming his own identity. Here was an opportunity to become an active participant in a story that had long kept him ensnared as just the son of someone tarnished. But would it be enough? "Why did you wait so long?" he asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "What changed?" Claire sighed deeply, tracing patterns on the table. "I feared for my life, Jack. After I left, I received threats that warned me to remain silent. My life took turns I couldn't control, and I buried the truth out of fear. But the past doesn't just stay buried forever. I've carried this weight, and I can no longer do it alone." Jack felt a pulse of understanding, mixing with anger and empathy. It was clear that everyone involved had made choices influenced by survival and fear. But now, faced with this new information, the whole dynamic shifted. He felt emboldened. The effects of Claire's choices echoed in his own, crafting a dilemma of loyalty and redemption. What do we do now? Jack realized he was on the precipice of a monumental decision. It could redefine not only his father's legacy but his own life trajectory. We go to the authorities, together. I'll present my findings, but we have to be prepared for the backlash. Are you ready for that? Claire's challenge was both a question and a warning. Jack took a deep breath, letting the weight of her words settle. He had to make a choice that demanded courage beyond what fear had shaped in him thus far. I'm ready, he declared, though uncertainty still lingered at the edges of his resolve. As he left the cafe, a fierce determination ignited within him. The shadows of doubt had not entirely dissipated, but there was a burgeoning strength in Jack that had been absent before. The path ahead was fraught with potential dangers, but for the first time, he felt he was stepping toward clarity rather than looming darkness. Yet, an unshakable question lingered: what would the backlash entail? The moment of truth was nearing, but what kind of storm would it unleash, and how prepared was he to face it? The chill in the air outside the Crestway Cafe invigorated Jack as he stepped into his car. It was time to commit, to navigate the intricate web that had ensnared his family. He gripped the steering wheel, feeling the texture of its cool leather against his palms, grounding himself in reality as adrenaline surged. He was fully aware that the journey ahead was uncertain, but it was his decision to make. Arriving home, he could feel the aura of his father's absence in every corner, heavy and suffocating. The old photographs lining the walls whispered stories of smiles that obscured deeper turmoil. A sudden wave of frustration surged through him. How had he allowed himself to become a mere spectator in a narrative that was his own? No more. Jack paced between the living room and his father's study, wrestling with a surge of emotions. He knew he had to map out a plan, a way to harness the momentum that Claire had ignited in him. This was more than a quest for truth, it was a reclamation of his own life and purpose. Flipping through the contents of his father's desk, he paused at a small drawer, sensing the gravity of what lay within. The papers, filled with reminders and to-do lists, began to reveal his father's meticulous mind. As memories flooded back, Jack felt a connection to the man who had shaped his very essence. Digging deeper, he unearthed a note with names and dates, potential targets of their investigation. Each name sparked a flicker of recognition, and with it, a renewed resolve. He flipped open his laptop, eyes narrowing, and began to research those names. One stood out, a local journalist known for delving into dark undercurrents. Jack's heart raced, perhaps he could enlist help without drawing unwanted attention. But as he typed the journalist's name into the search engine, dread settled over him. What if this led to a confrontation that would spiral out of control? He ground his teeth, weighing his options. Confidence ebbed and flowed like the tide. Why should he worry about what others might think? He had to push through this hesitation, ready to stand firm in his resolve. The familiar feeling of doubt crept back in what if their revelations yielded dangerous outcomes. Who was he becoming? In a moment of clarity, he remembered Claire's words about preparation. It galvanized his determination. He initiated a message to the journalist, outlining his story while intentionally omitting specifics that could compromise him. Taking this step was overwhelming yet exhilarating. Each keystroke connected him to the years of being trapped in uncertainty, giving him a voice he thought he'd lost. With the message sent, he leaned back, absorbing the weight of his actions. The silence in the room wrapped around him, daunting yet liberating. There was momentum building, and Jack could feel the stirrings of purpose now coursing through him. Suddenly, a buzz from his phone jolted him. An unexpected email notification jolted him from his thoughts. Instinctively, he clicked it open. It was a response from the journalist, concise yet inviting. Let's discuss further. Meet tomorrow at Starlight Cafe. It bore the urgency he had hoped for, but with it came the realization that there would be no going back. Jack exhaled shakily, heart racing as the gravity of his choices settled in. He couldn't ignore the sensation of impending confrontation. The next moment, he envisioned the challenges of exposing the truth. But it wasn't just about the truth anymore. It was about embracing who he was beneath the weight of external expectations. As the evening wore on, Jack felt invigorated yet anxious. He was on the cusp of something monumental, and as he replayed the upcoming meeting in his mind, another thought surfaced: what would he uncover next that could alter the course of not just their investigation, but his very identity? With the shadows of the past swirling around him like ghosts, he prepared to face whatever was coming. The inner conflict and external pressures were stirring, and Jack prepared himself for the inevitable storm ahead. Tomorrow would not only demand strength but transformation. What secrets awaited him in Starlight Cafe, and could he truly face the consequences that loomed? A restless night consumed Jack, hours blurring into darkness as thoughts collided with one another. Worries filtered through his mind like a relentless stream, tension coiling within him. He kept replaying the journalist's email, each word echoing ominously in the confines of his brain. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a confrontation, a plunge into murky waters teeming with uncertainties. Morning arrived, casting a harsh light on his fragile resolve. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating remnants of old breakfast rituals that now felt foreign. Jack made coffee, the rich aroma momentarily distracting him from the unyielding knot in his stomach. As he waited for the brew to drip, he thought of his dad, a man who had worn his resoluteness like armor. Jack yearned to embody that strength, yet the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on his shoulders. After a quick shower, he pulled on a crisp shirt as if to transform himself into something worth the journalist's time. The simple act of dressing felt like putting on a new skin, one that hinted at a budding intention to redefine himself. Who could he become if he could break free from his stagnant existence? He arrived at Starlight Cafe, the quaint little spot bustling with regulars, laughter enveloping the intimate space. Jack's nerves fluctuated as he pushed open the door. The warmth enveloped him, contrasting sharply with the chill still gnawing at his core. He spotted the journalist at a corner table, an imposing figure clad in a leather jacket, eyes reflecting intrigue and authority. Taking a deep breath, Jack approached. The journalist looked up, a hint of amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "Jack, right? Impressive how quickly you act on a hunch," he remarked, gesturing for Jack to sit. "What do you know?" Jack began, diving into the depths of the conversation, the desire for clarity overshadowing his trepidation. As they spoke, Jack shared the fragmented pieces of his father's life he had uncovered, the urgency coursing through him. The journalist listened intently, eyes narrowing with each name, connecting dots in ways Jack hadn't anticipated. "This sounds larger than just family matters. Are you prepared for the reckoning this might incite?" The journalist probed, pressing Jack into a moment of reflection. A flicker of doubt ignited within him. "I need to know what happened, for me and for my family." Each word he spoke solidified his determination, revealing strands of resolve he had not fully recognized. The journalist leaned in closer, the weight of his presence reaffirming that Jack's unearthed bravery was palpable. "Then we're in this together," the journalist replied, a spark of agreement igniting between them. A plan surfaced that would call upon their combined strengths, but even as excitement sprouted, Jack's mind circled back to the risks involved. What would this saga expose? Jack found himself questioning the motives of those listed in his father's notes, feeling a morbid curiosity about their roles in the narrative his life had spun into a web of secrecy. He needed to prepare for revelations that could terrify him, even as they emboldened his journey towards self-discovery. Yet, lurking beneath such determination were threads of fear. What if he unearthed truths that shattered his perception of his past? Would it delegitimize everything he thought he knew about who he was? This duality, seeking clarity while fearing the uncovered truths, gnawed at his core. As they wrapped up their meeting, a renewed sense of duty enveloped Jack. He was ready to dig deeper, but then a thought struck with sudden clarity. Who would he become as the emotional layers began to peel away? Jack stepped outside into the fresh air, the tension shifting but not dissipating. He felt a thrust forward, but now his focus was as much on the ramifications of his journey as it was on its objectives. What shadows lay ahead, unaddressed yet present, waiting for him to confront? The pavement felt uneven beneath his feet as Jack wrestled with the rising apprehension. The walls he had known were crumbling, revealing fractures in his identity. With the journalist now on his side, he was poised for transformation. Yet, he had to address the haunting specters of his family's past and his own lingering self-doubt that threatened to ensnare him once again. What if, amidst this pursuit, he lost more than just his preconceived notions? What parts of his essence would he discover beneath the layers of his father's legacy? The air outside felt charged, almost electric, as Jack walked away from the cafe. Each step propelled by an equal mix of fear and determination. His heart thudded loudly against his ribs, a metronome marking the urgency of his quest. He thought of the journalist's words, "We're in this together." Such a commitment became a double-edged sword. The notion of partnership offered some solace, yet it also magnified the responsibilities he was now bound to. As he turned the corner onto Elm Street, Jack felt an unsettling stillness creep around him. The usual chaos of city life was muted. For the first time, he was hyper-aware of everything: the distant sound of a train, the rustle of leaves, and even the silent conversations taking place in windows. It was almost surreal. He found himself questioning how much more he was willing to uncover. Would he feel liberated or imprisoned? With a resolve he hadn't known he had, Jack decided to head towards the public library. The scent of musty paper practically welcomed him, offering refuge in the countless volumes lining the shelves. He had thought about employing the old resources, perhaps newspaper archives or logs that might illuminate parts of his father's past long left unexamined. Sitting at a lonely table, Jack opened his father's notebooks, the ink smudged and illegible in spots but a wellspring of hope nonetheless. The patterns of his father's writing felt like a map, guiding him to lost landmarks buried beneath questions that threatened to drown him. He meticulously listed the names from the notes that had flooded his mind, now armed with purpose. One name, in particular, stood out: Victor Lane. It appeared multiple times, scribbled with urgency. Jack had to know why his father had fixated on this man. Hours melted away as he pored over articles about Victor Lane, an influential figure in local politics, marred by scandals that hinted at deeper ties to criminal activities. The connection made Jack's stomach twist. Could his father have been involved in something so sinister? A pit of dread settled in his chest, doubting the very foundations of his identity. The chilling realization clawed at him that uncovering his father's history could reshape everything he believed about his own upbringing. Would he still respect the man who raised him? As he considered this, an unexpected sense of clarity struck him. Maybe this wasn't just about his father's past, it was about Jack reclaiming his own narrative. Determined, he took out his phone and began typing a message to the journalist, requesting a follow-up meeting. This felt monumental, not only a step into the unknown but a deliberate push against breadcrumbs left by a ghost. But just as Jack was about to send it, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He pulled it out to see an unknown number flash on the screen. Hesitation gripped him. Should he answer? Was this a call related to his father's legacy or merely a distraction? Opening the call, he steeled himself. Hello? The voice on the other end sent chills down his spine. Jack. You don't know me, but we need to talk about Victor Lane. Panic surged, but also purpose. A piece of his puzzle was shifting. Who are you? He pressed, resisting the urge to recoil. We don't have time, the voice continued, urgency dripping from every word. Your father's past is more dangerous than you think. Jack's heart pounded as he realized he was plunged deeper into a whirlwind, the stakes rising unavoidably. What had he stumbled into? And what was it about his father that could bring this stranger to him? Facing his father's past head-on was no longer an option, it was a necessity. But at what cost? He took a deep breath, ready to venture further into terrifying waters. The path ahead was murky, and the truths he sought carried risks he hadn't fully understood. Were he and the journalist prepared for what lay ahead? With the call still crackling ominously in his ear, Jack felt the ground shift beneath him. The moving pieces of his existence were about to collide violently, and he was at the epicenter. He had to confront the reality of who Victor Lane was and what that meant for his family. Would this leap into darkness yield self-discovery, or would it unravel everything he once believed to be true? Jack's instinct screamed at him to disconnect, to retreat into the comforting shadows of ignorance. But the pull to know, to uncover the truth that lurked beneath years of silence and the enigma his father had crafted, was stronger. Every cell in his body urged him to lean in, to ask more, yet a disquieting sense of dread gnawed at his gut. Dangerous? Jack echoed, his voice barely above a whisper, as if the word itself could summon whatever threat loomed on the other end of the line. Yes. Victor Lane is more than he appears. Your father, the things he was involved in, it's crucial you understand the magnitude. The urgency in the voice ignited a fire of anxiety within Jack, a catalyst for his mind to race ahead, flinging open the doors he had tried to keep tightly shut. I want to know, he said finally, the words spilling forth with a mix of defiance and desperation. What did my father do? A pause from the caller prompted Jack to feel the weight of the silence. Was this person gathering their thoughts or perhaps stalling? It would be best to meet in person. There's too much at stake, and I worry that the walls have ears. Can you come to the old warehouse on Pine Avenue? I can explain everything there. Why should I trust you? Jack challenged, skepticism threading through his voice. Because you don't have a choice, Jack, the voice snapped, irritation tangled with concern. Your father's past isn't just his anymore, it's yours too. You need to make a decision. With that, the call ended, leaving Jack holding the phone like a grenade, the pin pulled but still intact. He fought against the surging tide of uncertainty while weighing the options swirling in his mind. Turning back was a temptation that thrummed in his veins, bred from a desire to maintain a facade of normalcy. But deep down, he knew there could be no real peace without confrontation. He leaned back in his chair, feeling the humidity in the air hang thick, almost mirroring the turmoil inside him. Should he confide in the journalist he had reluctantly enlisted into this fray? The thought alone felt both reassuring and frightening, weighing on his conscience like an anchor. Stepping outside, Jack let the cool air wash over him as he began to walk toward Pine Avenue, each step wrought with uncertainty yet charged with a burgeoning sense of agency. Instead of succumbing to dread, he found a flicker of resolve igniting within him. This was not merely about uncovering his father's dark legacies, it was about reclaiming his own identity from the shadows that loomed over it. The warehouse loomed ahead, a crumbling monument to secrets best left buried. With a breath that tasted of courage, a thick, bitter brew, Jack pushed open the door. Inside, the smell of rust and decay mingled, just as his confusion over his father's past and his own future did. Tension crackled in the air, a charged silence that waited to be disrupted. Jack, a figure emerged from the shadows. You came. The voice belonged to a woman, her face laid in steely determination, a sharp contrast to the anxiety that coursed through him. You need to listen carefully. The truth about Victor Lane is intertwined with your father's choices and yours too. Whatever she was about to reveal could shatter the fragile understanding Jack had fought so hard to maintain about himself. But he was no longer the passive observer in someone else's story, he was the protagonist, ready to face the truth head-on. The deeper he delves, the more questions surface like sharks in the murky waters ahead. Could he withstand the truth that could change everything he believed, or would this confrontation necessitate a new version of himself, a version he wasn't sure he was ready to meet? Fingers trembling, Jack braced himself for the inevitable revelations to come, a fusion of fear and crooked determination coursing through him. He was on the edge, with unknown depths beneath, desperately seeking to rise towards a clarity that felt just out of reach. As the woman began to speak, Jack felt the foundations of his reality teetering. What awaited him next in this perilous search for truth? Jack's heart raced as the woman stepped into the dim light filtering through the cracked windows of the warehouse. Her eyes, a mixture of steel and warmth, scanned him, as if gauging his readiness to absorb what she was about to divulge. The air around him felt thick with history, laden with the weight of unspoken truths. Victor Lane, she began, her voice steady but low, as if the walls themselves were eavesdropping. He was a name whispered in the shadows of criminal circles, an enigma even among those who operated in the dark. Your father had ties to him, more than you can possibly know. Ties that could put you in danger. Jack took a step back, the mention of his father settling like lead in his stomach. What do you mean danger? I mean, she continued, that uncovering the connections your father forged with Lane could expose you to residual threats. Your father worked in a world filled with compromises and unspeakable choices. Anger flickered in him at his father, at the secrets that had shaped his life, and at himself for being so naive. You act as if I have a choice in this, he snapped, his voice tinged with disbelief. As if I can just walk away from this reality. She nodded, unflinching. But the choice you have is whether to confront your past or let it control you. You're not just his son, you can redefine your path. Knowledge is power if you choose to wield it. Jack clenched his fists, the uncertainty battling with her insistence. Deeper understanding could indeed equate to strength, yet the fear of what he might uncover about himself loomed like a predator. What do you suggest I do? First, you must learn the truth. The connections your father formed are intertwined with Victor Lane's operations. There are still people watching, waiting. I can help you, but it requires that you grit your teeth and endure an uncomfortable journey. Help me how? He could feel the tension building, a cocktail of apprehension and curiosity that made his heart pulse erratically. I have contacts, resources. I've pieced together snippets about Lane's dealings over the years. If we can figure out your father's role, we might uncover the skeletons that have remained hidden. You'll need to be careful, and you'll need to act decisively, she explained, her tone now sharpened with determination. Doubt fluttered within him, yet a spark of defiance pushed against it. There was no escaping the grip of his father's legacy, but he could confront it. Jack felt an internal wrestling match unfold, the boy seeking security and the man yearning for clarity, willing to defend his identity against the cascade of uncertainty that lay ahead. He steadied his breath, pushing aside the tremors of fear. I'm in, he declared, each word breaking the final chains of passivity. I want to know everything no matter the cost. A satisfied smirk crossed the woman's face, a glimmer of shared resolve, yet Jack couldn't shake the chill of foreboding. Whatever revelations awaited him, he sensed they would reshape the very fabric of his identity. Be prepared, she warned, her eyes piercing through him like a clarion call. The path forward will not only reveal your father's choices but will also challenge your own values and beliefs. Are you ready for that? Jack's pulse quickened. This was beyond mere curiosity, this was a call to action, a demand for growth in the midst of chaos. I am, he said, almost surprised at his own conviction. As the woman shared meticulous details, the landscape of Jack's reality began to shift. He felt as though he was standing on the precipice of a new self, grappling with an identity that had been obscured by layers of lies and silence. But in the recesses of his mind, questions loomed larger. What price would he pay to chase this truth? And would he still recognize himself when all was said and done? As the woman detailed Victor Lane's dark ambitions, Jack's world darkened further, anticipation settling hard in his gut. The battlefield of his past was lying in wait, and a new war won for survival and self-awareness was just beginning. Now. However, it wasn't just about discovering his father's truth. It was about reclaiming an identity steeped in clarity, even if the revelations might be catastrophic. And yet, amidst thoughts of who he might become, Jack couldn't shake a creeping dread. What if the truth he unearthed was more than he could bear? Determined, he pushed down the rising anxiety as she spoke, steeling himself against the storm brewing ahead. Jack was ready to confront the shadows, but he wasn't fully prepared for the depths they could reach. The following day dawned gray and heavy. Jack woke to the sound of rain drumming against the windowpane, its relentless rhythm echoing the turmoil swirling within him. He felt the weight of yesterday's revelations pressing down, a tangible reminder of the journey he had willingly embarked upon. Uncertain about where to start, he forced himself into action, pulling on a damp sweatshirt and stepping out into the streets. As he navigated the slick sidewalks, Jack's mind was a tempest of thoughts. He knew the woman would contact him regarding the next steps. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown, urging him to brace himself for whatever was to come. He was no longer just Jack, the ordinary clerk at a dull office, but a man standing at the threshold of a hidden legacy, his identity strained under the pressure of discovery. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his reverie. He glanced at the screen, a text from the woman. "Meet me at the usual spot. We'll dive deeper." He felt a mixture of eagerness and dread weaving through his veins. The usual spot was an unassuming diner, its worn blue vinyl booths a contrast to the life-altering decisions that forced themselves into his reality. Arriving at the diner, the scent of brewed coffee enveloped him, grounding him momentarily. He slid into a booth and waited, the tension of expectation prickling at his skin. Jack's thoughts flickered back to the shadows of his father, a specter of untrustworthy decisions that haunted his memories. It was time to confront not only his father's past but also the man he had been up to this point. When she arrived, her demeanor was no longer measured, it was urgent. "We have to act quickly, Jack," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "The closer we get to the truth, the more eyes will be on us." "Tell me what you found," Jack urged, leaning forward, his heart pounding in his chest. She pulled out a folder, thick with papers bearing names, dates, and fragments of conversations that curled around his mind like tendrils of smoke. "Your father's connections to Victor Lane were more extensive than we thought. They weren't just business dealings, there were personal stakes involved." Secrets that could put me in danger," he interrupted, bitterness creeping into his voice. "Why didn't he ever tell me?" The woman met his gaze, her expression firm yet sympathetic. "Sometimes the burden of truth is so heavy that those carrying it choose silence. But you have to approach this with a clear mind. Emotions cloud judgment, yours can lead to impulsive decisions." Jack clenched his jaw, contemplating her words. She was right. His feelings of betrayal and anger would only entangle him further in the web of deceit. "What do I need to do?" he asked, determination hardening in his voice. "I don't want to just react, I want to plan." "Good," she replied, allowing a small smile. "We need to gather evidence before confronting anyone. Start with some of your father's old acquaintances. They may have insight into his world that you don't." His past seeped into his thoughts, moments spent in his father's growing shadow, the awe he held towards a man who had now become a stranger. It was as if the foundation of his identity had been built on shifting sand, and now Jack was tasked with reconstructing it, brick by brick. "Begin with someone named Alex Marston," she instructed, pulling out a business card. "He was close to your father. Sounds as if he may have been involved in deeper dealings." Jack examined the card, weighing his next move. "How do I approach him without raising suspicion?" "Be strategic. You're not an outsider, you're his son. Use that connection to leverage information. Ask pointed questions and listen closely to how he responds." The storm within him began to simmer, replaced by a surge of strategy. Being proactive felt empowering. This was a skill set he hadn't realized he possessed. Each inquiry would bring him closer to understanding the man who had shaped him and also to unraveling the man he could become. As they continued their discussion, plans. Crystallizing between them, Jack felt a responsibility surge within him. This wasn't just about exposing the legacy his father left behind. It was about reclaiming an identity he could be proud of even if it meant facing a truth he feared. But as the clouds gathered outside, casting a shadow over their booth, Jack found himself grappling with the reality that some truths might invoke the wrath of those who would go to great lengths to keep secrets buried. The unease settled in once more, but there was no turning back. He had stepped onto a path from which he could not retreat. The moment of reckoning loomed closer, threatening to sever the fragments of his past from the potential of his future. So it began an intricate dance with shadows, one that would demand courage and resilience. What awaited him as he made contact with someone who could unravel the final threads of his father's life? As Jack stood outside Alex Marston's unassuming home, he could feel the weight of anticipation pushing down on him like the gray clouds hanging above. The past few days had been a blur of revelations and renewed purpose, culminating in this moment. His hand hesitated at the doorbell, a flicker of doubt surfacing. What if Alex was unwilling to provide the truth? But Jack shook off the thoughts. He had traversed too far to retreat now. The door creaked open, revealing Alex, a man whose weathered face mirrored the weight of untold stories. Hesitation flickered in his eyes, but he quickly masked it. "Jack," he greeted, the corners of his mouth curving slightly. "What brings you here? Can we talk?" Jack ventured, barely managing to keep the tremor of urgency from his voice. Alex nodded, stepping aside. Once inside, the aroma of strong coffee wrapped around them, grounding Jack amidst the whirlwind of emotions swirling in his mind. They settled at a small kitchen table, filled with eclectic items that hinted at a storied life. "I was surprised to hear from you," Alex began cautiously. "Last I knew, you were focused on your family business. Didn't he think you were interested in digging up old graves?" Jack's heartbeat quickened. "It's not about digging up graves, it's about uncovering the truth. My father's name is still sullied, and I want to understand what really happened." Alex's gaze hardened, a mixture of concern and understanding. "Your father was a complicated man, Jack. There were layers to him that most never saw. The connections he had with Victor Lane, those weren't just business. They were tangled." Jack leaned forward, the pulse of determination strumming through him. "What do you mean? What was he involved in?" The room grew thick with silence as Alex searched for words. "There were negotiations that stretched beyond our town connections with dangerous people. Your father believed he could handle it, control it. But it spiraled into something else entirely." Jack's heart lurched, each revelation striking like a hammer against the anvil of his soul. The idealized memory of the man he had known was fracturing. "What do you mean? Who were these people?" "Trust me when I say, it's not just about business dealings. There were threats involved, intimidation, power plays that endangered everyone around him. I tried to warn him, but he was stubborn, believing he could navigate those waters alone." Anger bubbled within Jack, mingling with a disheartening sense of betrayal. "So, he played the hero but only ended up being a pawn. You could have stopped him." "I tried. But he was set on his path," Alex shot back, his voice steady but laced with regret. "And you know what happens in these circles, Jack. Loyalty can quickly turn into liability. Secrets are currency, and your father was entangled in a web that stretched far beyond what you can imagine." In that moment, Jack felt the scales of his existence tilt. This was no longer just a quest for vindication. It was about unearthing the buried reality of who he was. "I need to know everything," Jack insisted, fighting against the rising wave of despair. "If there's a chance to uncover the truth, I'll explore it no matter where it leads. Be cautious." Alex's tone grew serious, the flicker of concern back in his eyes. "People still watch. Those lingering threats from Victor Lane's side. They don't just fade away. You need to have a plan. You can't do this alone." In that moment, the weight of his journey solidified. Jack had started as the son of a tarnished man, but he was becoming his own author at last. "I'm not alone, I have allies who are willing to help. It's time for me to reclaim my family's name and find my truth." As they delved deeper into the details, names and locations, the meticulous piecework of a family legacy, something inside Jack shifted. Each revelation felt not just like a burden, but a transformation. He was steering into the storm, refusing to let fear dictate his identity any longer. By the time he left Alex's house, a renewed sense of purpose enveloped him. The rain had eased, transforming into a light drizzle as if the sky acknowledged his resolve. Jack stepped into the car and took a moment to breathe. The weight of the truth was daunting, but he could no longer allow the whispers of the past to dictate his present. He wasn't just unearthing the truth for his father, he was forging his own path toward reclamation, armed with understanding and newfound strength. The journey ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but he was ready to face any storm. Over the coming days, he would uncover more pieces of his father's choices and in doing so, discover exactly who he could become. With the remnants of fear slipping away, Jack gripped the steering wheel, determined to return to the journalist, sharing everything he had learned, and venture together into the depths of his family's past. There was something liberating in the uncertainty, each step forward illuminating the shadows that had long cloaked him in insecurity. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting warm light on the drenched pavement, Jack felt a deep sense of validation. He was equipped not just with knowledge, but acceptance of his father's flaws and his own determination to press on. He had embarked on a journey that could reshape everything, fortifying him with the strength to confront whatever lay ahead. He wasn't merely the son of a man burdened with shadows anymore, he was Jack ready to unearth the truths that would liberate him and, perhaps, redefine his legacy. Whatever truths remained buried would be confronted, and, in time, he would emerge triumphant from the depths. It was time to carve out a future that honored the past while defying its limitations. Now, dear viewers, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more hearts. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Jack's journey, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. It's through your engagement that we can continue bringing stories of personal growth and transformation to life.